My name is Mary Maguire, Mary Hedrick Maguire. I am probably the oldest person living in Hartsville right now.
And how old are you?
I'm 87. I will be 88 in January.
Okay.
And today I am going to be the torch queen. I get to carry the torch. A great honor. I volunteer for the fish fry. I've helped several years fish fry. I've worked all over town, practically every side of the square but one. And then after I retired once, I went back to work for the Postal Service for 30 years. And then I retired about a year ago. And I'm just a good girl.
You are a good girl.
Well, as a kid, we lived on the farm about a mile out, and we had all our fun out there. Well, I'm not going to tell what all we did, but we played a lot of ball, and we played in the woods a lot, and we swam in the creek and picked blackberries. Well, we were poor people, I know that. 11 kids. But I think we were all better kids than the kids are today because they're all spoiled.
Were there different businesses here in town?
I can't remember a lot of the other old ones, but they were, I know, a store and a barber shop and a restaurant and the bank. I can remember when the bank was here.
Do you remember when they used to show movies up here on the square?
Yes, I do, and I worked down here at the restaurant at that time, and we would just be overwhelmed with people coming in wanting burgers. And
during the movie?
Yeah, during the movie and after.
Were they movies with sound?
I think so. I was working, I don't remember seeing too many of them. I remember one time when I was working down there, an old Model T came up, wanted gasoline, and I went out there to fill it up, and I couldn't find where to put the gas in. Everybody was in there laughing at me, and it seemed like the gas was put in from the inside or something. Anyhow, we finally found it.
Finally found the hole.
Finally found where to put the gas in. Oh.
Any other memory of Hartsville that other people probably wouldn't know?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably a lot of people I remember that are gone now that used to be around here. I remember church, we used to have a church full. Now we've lost most of them, and the older people now, people just don't go to church anymore like they used to.
Yeah, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's about it.
Well, we're the Hedrick family. I'm Diana, and this is my sister Betty. And we have lots of memories from Hartsville growing up here. I was born and raised here, just right across the road, and lived here up until the time I got married. And Betty, you lived here until you got married and then moved over onto the farm with Bob. She married Bob Stewart.
I think I was about 3 years old when we moved here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was born here. Actually, Betty is the only one. We had 11 children, and Betty is the only one out of the whole family that was born at the hospital. All the rest of the babies were delivered at home. She's always been the black sheep.
I'm so special.
We said it was because she was a black sheep. She says it's because she was special. Which she is. She's very special. Bobby Hamner, that's the name I was trying to think of.
Oh, yes.
We, as being a large family, we just always had friends in and out all the time. And Bobby Hamner was a friend of Marvin's, and he came for a weekend, and he stayed for 3 years. I think it was about 3 years. And just like he just came and stayed, and then one day he was just gone. And a few years later, he was actually killed in an automobile accident. And we always kind of figured that was why he had to go away, because Mother would have just, I don't think she could have dealt with that, of losing someone that wasn't one of her own children living there with us. But Bobby was treated just like everybody else when it came birthdays or Christmas or anything else. He was treated just like everybody else was. And we just always had people in and out all the time. And Sandy Karate was probably my best friend at the time. And Sandy was in and out all the time, as well as I was in and out of her house. And then Mickey Harris was in. She lived right next door to us. And the one story I always remember about Mickey, I love to tell this on Mickey, Mickey was not allowed to go down to the campus. But the campus was where we went and hung out and just, I don't know what we did, but we just played down there. And so she and I went down there one day, but we weren't supposed to be there. Well, she got scratched with like briar bushes. So when she came back home, she couldn't tell her parents where she'd been. So she told them that she had scratched it on the barbed wire fence that was between her property and our property. So she had to go to the doctor and get a tetanus shot, which she wouldn't have had to have had but she couldn't tell her parents where it was at. Yeah. And the other crazy thing I did, there was a tree out there at the end of the garden between our house and theirs, and we weren't supposed to climb the tree, but we did. And I fell out and got a big goose egg on the back of my head, but I didn't tell Mother about it for a long, long time. And then it ended up turning into a cyst. And I don't think she ever did know how I got that big knot back there, but that was fun.
I bet she knew.
She probably did. We thought she didn't know things, but she knew everything that was going on. You probably did. So tell us what you remember about Hartsville.
Okay. I just wanted to relate about how Mother was. Mother always, we were always dragging friends home. Yeah. And it didn't matter if it was 1 or 10. She always had a lot of food cooked up anyway, and then she'd say, well, get them a plate. Set them down, get them a plate. Like, it was nothing to her to have several other people in for a meal. It's just what we did. Yeah. Yeah. And she was always very special that way.
Yeah. Well, I remember one other thing, and I didn't really know this until after I'd moved away, but do you remember Aunt Flossie and her family always coming? Mm-hmm. And after I had moved away, and one day I was talking to Patty Ann, was a cousin of ours, and she said, well, you know why we always came to your house, don't you? And I said, no, I just thought you were just family and you came to visit. And she said, no. She said, my dad was an alcoholic. And toward the middle to the end of the month, he would have spent all of his money on alcohol, and there was no money for food. And so their mother, Flossie, would say, well, we'll go to Aunt Nell's, and Aunt Nell will take care of us. So they would pack up all their kids, and I don't remember, they had not as many as we did, but they had several. And they would come to our house and stay for a few days and eat, and then it'd be the end of the month or the next month, and they would have money and they would go back again. So I just always, I thought that was a neat thing that I didn't know as a child. But I remember when people would come and it was bedtime, we only had 3 bedrooms, but we had multiple beds in each bedroom, and you would bunk together most of the time. You never had a bed to yourself. But when family would come, we would make what we called a pallet on the floor. And a pallet was blankets that you would fold up and a pillow and then something to cover up with. And the kids would all sleep on the floor. And big dinners, family dinners, was just crazy when holidays especially. Everybody would bring food in, and we would all eat, but you were just all over the house because there was not room enough at the table for everybody. So we had, what were the little tables? TV trays. You would sit in the living room and you would have a TV tray, or you would sit on the floor, and just so many things. And we all went to the church up here, and we used to sing together. Marvin and Betty, the Hedrick family singers, and so it was Betty and I, and Marvin did the most of it, I think. Wilma did some with us. I don't remember any of the others singing up there, and we went to school up here up through the 6th grade. So you had 3 grades in one room, and then the next 3 grades you would go to the next room. But when you were there, they had the big room. Tell them about the big room where you did tumbling and plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our big tumbling group up there, and I remember they made me do what they called a revolving headstand. I would stand on my head, put my hands down, and walk around and spin around. And they now think that's how I got that front mental dementia.
Is that right?
Jiggled something loose in there, and I asked the doctor about that. He said, well, that's possible.
That's possible. Well, you're doing well that you did as long as you did for as long as... That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's one of their memories.
But they did plays
Deaver
up
Wilson,
there.
he was our teacher for years. We
Yeah.
had the same teacher for years. But he was always very supportive. Everything we wanted to do, fine.
Do you remember when David would get in trouble a lot? Our brother David would get in trouble a lot. And one time he was talking to Deaver Wilson, our principal, and he just said, I just don't know what makes me do that. He said, I think the devil just makes me do it.
There's just something inside
Something
of me.
inside of me, yeah. I think the devil just makes me do it. He was quite the stinker.
Yeah.
He was always
He
into
thought that was
something.
really funny.
I don't know. I'm sure there's tons and tons more, but that's really all I can think of right now.
Started off, I lived over by the Christian church in what they called the Flats. And Mom and Dad started building a house down on the south end of Hartsville. And we would go back and forth in the evenings and in the morning down to that house and work on the house. They had a team of mules down there that helped dig the basement. So that went on for quite a while, and eventually got it built. We moved in it. So and by that time I was probably about 6, something like that. Went to school up here on the north end. We had 1 through 8 grades at the Hartsville school. I went 1 through 8 at that school, and went to high school over in Hope. So that kind of got me. I'm lost for words now. Got me in a different school system or organization.
Is your dad going to participate?
More kids, more opportunities to play basketball and run track. And that I did.
But you were on the tumbling team out here when you were.
Oh yeah, I was on the tumbling team. I think at least half of the kids that went to school up here was on the tumbling team at one time. But old Deaver Wilson, he was the teacher. He taught 4 through 8, and he arranged to get the mats, and we had one of the 3 big rooms up in the school was used for lunch, recreation, keep us indoors when the weather was real bad. And we started in playing on the mats, and he kind of coached us a little bit on how to fall. And we got pretty good. We'd line up, they'd get on their knees, and hands and knees, and then you'd jump over 1 and roll, and then you'd jump over 2 and roll, and then 3 and roll, and 4 and roll. So I got about as far as any of them on how many I could jump over and roll. But we started doing handstands and cartwheels.
Oh, they're so much fun.
I can't remember exactly what we did.
Yeah.
One of them I got down on my hands and knees, went up into a handstand, and then from there I kicked my feet out and flipped over and landed on my feet. And I didn't do that very good. But we, all the girls and the boys had suits made by their moms. And we were a blue satin shirt and white shorts. I don't know if we had shorts or we had, I think we had long pants. Probably got a picture over there that shows it. But we would go to various PTA meetings, and just different functions. Didn't require much talent. As far as the town of Hartsville, right in front of the fire station is a block building. Used to be the post office. And we'd get out of school and everybody'd run down to the post office and get their mail and run home and give it to our moms. At that time, most of the moms stayed at home and dads went to work. Now we all go to work. But yeah, we was crowding over each other in the post office trying to put our combination in and get our mail. So every once in a while we'd have to redo the combination.
Who was the postmaster back then?
Ruth Wilson. That was Deaver Wilson's wife. Deaver Wilson was the teacher, 4 through 8, up at the school. So they didn't have any kids, but the way it worked out, they had all the kids at Hartsville. Oh, I hung around with Larry Smith, Dennis Gommel, Bill Birkenstock, Ernie Moat, Darrell Emily,
Butch Brown.
Butch Brown. Butch lived across from our house down on the south end. But we all just kind of hung around together, I guess.
What kind of stuff did you do for fun?
Well, we rode our bicycles everywhere in town. And occasionally we'd ride out into the country and get in the woods and burn a can of chicken noodle soup or something. And never really got in any big trouble. Not at that age anyway.
Who was the marshal back then?
Well, the very first marshal I remember is Ott Smith.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. Ott was quite a character. He had a big gun on him, and he's talking about how tough the job was. Up here on the corner was Ernie Gilland, his grocery store, gas station, whatever. He was the Walmart of Hartsville. Had it all. But we'd ride our bikes for a while and go up there and get us a big ROC Coca-Cola or get a cream soda and get a Twinkie or something.
Yeah.
Needed a little fuel to ride that bike. But Ott he was up there telling us one day how tough the job was. And I remember a story they told about him where they was repairing the roads in town, the potholes. And they ended up with about 3/4 of a load of asphalt. And they said, well, what are we going to do with this asphalt? And old Ott says, well, go down there and dump it right in the front of my house down there. Well, Ott didn't know that asphalt would set up like concrete does. And he didn't do anything with it. It just sat there. Next year it was just sitting there. It sat there forever, I think. And as I'd go by that corner, I thought, well, I wonder when he's going to get that asphalt. But we was hauling manure from my grandfather's bus barn. We go scoop it out in the manure spreader. Dad had an old John Deere tractor. He started it by hand, turning the flywheel. It would hit and miss a little bit, occasionally backfire. But we'd get the manure spreader filled and wander up through town across the highway and go out north all the way to a field which my uncle owned, and spread that manure on his field. Well, Bill was getting bored. He was riding behind me, I was driving. And we got in front of the post office, and Bill reached down and pulled the beater lever. And manure started flying everywhere. It's kind of like where the shit hit the fan. But Ruth Wilson was the postmistress at that time. She called the cop. Well, Roseberry lives down in where Margie Emily lives now.
Yeah, I remember.
He was a young cop.
Is he a state trooper?
Yeah, he's a state trooper. And we went on up. We eventually got the lever shut down at the Methodist Church. So spread it about 3 houses down along the road. And we spread it in the field, come back, and here's Roseberry right there, just as we come out of the field, waiting with us. He said, boys, you made a mess back there. I think he said a hell of a mess back there in front of the square. And you get your shovels and brooms and whatever it takes to clean that up. Said if you don't do it, I'm going to get you for a leaky load. So we was his word was God as far as we were concerned.
Tell the world who you are, too.
I'm Mitzi Shipley, used to be Mitzi Howard. I'm the daughter of Maxine and James Howard of Hartsville. I grew up in Hartsville. I was the town paper carrier. I know everybody. One of my favorite stories is Marvin Hedrick, one of my people on my route. He always threatened he was going to throw me in his swimming pool. If you don't know, Marvin had a swimming pool. He was always wanting to throw me in it.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Papers and all. I had a whole bundle of papers, and he goes, he's always threatening he was going to push me to throw me in, to push me in it. Well, one day we were joking around, and he actually did push me in it. He thought he had me, but I went on in, me and my bundle of newspapers. I got out of the pool screaming, cursing at him a couple times, and told him, I said, you better grab me a towel and grab your wallet. We got to go buy some papers. We went to went up here to Doc McQueen's store. We went to Hope. We went to the Junction. I end up getting my 60 newspapers with the cost of his wallet. But yeah, then he helped me deliver the papers. So, because I was running late, you know, gotta be on time. Plus, I gotta be in the house at Mom's house because we eat at 4:30, and you gotta be prompt at Mom's house at 4:30. You know, want to eat supper. But yeah, that's one memory of Hartsville. Another thing is when your kid growing up, going out down to the graveyard, swinging on the gold grapevines. Remember, of course, you know, that was a no-no thing for Mom, you know. She was always saying, you don't go down to the graveyard.
You went anyway.
I went down there anyway, have fun, swinging on them grapevines and stuff. Which now the grapevines ain't there no more. Janet and Arnold Beckett have their beautiful log cabin home down there and everything. Then, of course, another highlight was, you know, coming up here to the Hartsville Fish Fry with the Stosey family and playing the games and running and ripping with the Stoseys here in town. They're all now in Texas, so, yeah. Let's see what else. I do remember a couple times, you know, back when Gordon Ricketts used to own the liquor store. I ain't gonna go any further than that because if Mom looks at this, she'd be going to kill me. But yeah, I had a few free beers from Gordon in the liquor store, but oh well.
Tell me what it was like going to Doc McQueen's store.
What was like going in Doc's? Oh, you go in there at Doc's, you know. He'd go in there. What do you need? I'm looking for the hurry up. That was Doc. But he was a good person. Ruby, you go in there. Doc, shut up. Let her, you know, kids are going to be kids. Go in there and get your bubble gum, your favorite sucker, and pop. Now get out of here. That was Doc. Yeah. Stosey's store used to be here. That was like home to me. Go in there, play pool. They had a pool table in there and a little restaurant. Yep, and then they had the restaurant, the coffee cup, going in there. I'm going to steal one of Jim's fries in a minute. And going in there. So it was really neat. But, yep, I was a paper carrier for 10 years.
Were you? That's a long time.
Yeah, 1980 to 1990. Yep, I had to deal with it, yep.
I looked all over for a picture. I know I have a picture of you with your paper.
I have, yes, I have. I wish I would have brought it. I never thought about digging through that stuff. I would have brought that picture. Yep, and it was taken from your side door, which now is where you go in and out to go to your pool. Mm-hmm. Your pool wasn't even there yet, and that's what.
Through, I don't know how many albums looking for that picture of you, and I never found it. And I know it's there somewhere in one of my albums.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway.
So who was your best customer and your worst customer?
My favorite. Oh boy, I've got a lot of favorites. I would say one of my favorite people that I love to go to see was Janet Kimball. Because Miss Janet should always come out. Are you hot, thirsty? She'd always have me a glass of water, a glass of tea, or a cookie. And always, you know, just always a smile on Janet's face. And I love her. My worst customer, Jim Worthall. That's why I'm laughing. Jim Worthall, God rest his soul now, but yeah, Jim Worthall, oh, yeah, he gave me a hard time. Put the paper in my mailbox. Then the next week, I'll put it in my door. I got aggravated with it one time and threw it in the middle of the yard. It was halfway between the door and halfway between the mailbox. The paper box, which his wife, Pauline, God love her, she had a sense of humor and she was laughing about it. She goes, oh, Mitzi. But no, Jim, yeah, I had my time with Jim, but he was, yeah. And then, of course, I always liked Jessie Dillman. She was another one of my favorites. I always heard a lot of, like, Bible. She'd always, you know, stuff about her, you know, talking about the Bible and stuff. But yeah. Oh, Jim Worthall, boy. A household name there.
Do you miss living in Hartsville?
I do and I don't. I like coming back. I don't because when winter hits, you know, it's kind of, I hate driving in snow. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like living in Columbus. But when, you know, any other time, I love Hartsville. I mean, I come back there every time there's something going on here, like the fish fry. Of course, I'm here today and everything. Plus, going around visiting. Every time I'm with Mom, I said, Mom, I got to go make my rounds. As soon as I leave the house, I don't go to Aunt Rue's house first because, you know, I'll stay there forever. But I go to Janet Kimball's. Mm-hmm. And then I go a few of the other older people, you know, that what few are still here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, but yeah.
My name is Diana Sue Biddle. I lived in Hartsville, Indiana. I was born in Columbus, Indiana, and spent my first birthday out here out here what they call the holler right outside of Hartsville, at my grandmother's house. My mother was Mary Viola Birkenstock, and my father was Max Biddle, Joseph Max Biddle, and we lived, when I was 1, like I said, I had my first birthday at grandmother's, and then we moved over here on the other side of the square here in what was called the flats. They had 4 apartments in the flats, and we lived in one of them. I don't remember too much about that because we bought this little house right across the street here, which had been a grocery store owned by Mary Beck and Todd Beck. Todd Beck was a professor at the college. Todd Sr. was. There was also a Todd Jr. We lived there until 1951. On January the 1st, we moved to Shelbyville. But during that time of me living in Hartsville, I attended the Hartsville grade school up here. It's a 3-room building. We had a little room, a music room, and a big room. The little room was 1 through 4, and the big room was 5 through 8. Went to school there, and all the history that I can tell you about Hartsville is really wonderful. There used to be a college sitting right here in this ground where we are now, and it burnt. And then they moved it out to the south part of Hartsville and built a 3-story brick building, which was eventually called the Hartsville University. The Hartsville College was started by the people in Hartsville back in the 1800s. And then the United Brethrens moved into Hartsville, and they took over the running of the college. The college, when it burnt, was separated, and part of it went to Huntington, Indiana, and became part of the Huntington College, and the other part of it went to Indianapolis and became part of the Central College of Indiana. Now it is called the University of Indianapolis, and it's still the Huntington College. The United Methodist Church has several colleges around in Indiana. They are affiliated with the Indianapolis University. They are also affiliated with the Hanover College down in Madison, and they are affiliated with the DePaul University just out west of Indianapolis. Also, when I lived here as a child, I can remember this town is nothing like it is now. When you look at the spaces on the square, on the outside of the square where the buildings are burnt, you cannot realize how they put all the buildings in those spaces that were there. There used to be a house over here that was called, the Beck twins lived there. And in one of the apartments, and in the other apartment, the Wally's grandmother lived. Also across the street here, on the other side of the park, was where the house was where I lived in our apartment. I don't remember much about that, but I really remember a lot about living in the little house over here. There was a bank building next door to it, and then there was a vacant lot, and then there was Jesse and Bud Dillman's home, and then there was a restaurant. And I can never remember Hartsville not having a restaurant in it of some sort. Maybe not a big full-fledged restaurant, but you've always been able to get something to eat in Hartsville. My sister Myra and I talk when she comes to visit me, and we have decided that we would not take $1 million for our memory of our childhood in Hartsville. It's a great town to raise your kids. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody's mother tells you what to do, and you mind them just like they're your own mother. And my dad, Max Biddle, was a Catholic. And when the priest come down from Greensburg to make the decision, for my dad to make the decision of what he was going to do with his 4 children that he had at that time, whether we were going to go to Greensburg or to Columbus to the Catholic Church, and my dad said that it's not a decision for me to make, it is up to my children. We decided to stay at Hartsville and go to school in Hartsville and go to the United Methodist Church here it's now a stone church on the corner here. And so my dad turned around to the priest. He says, if that's my children's decision, and he says, I will be joining the United Methodist Church. He did. He brought scouting to Hartsville at the United Methodist Church. Him and Scan Hedrick, which his name is actually George, but I always called him Scan, and I never really could remember his name. And Lester Llewellyn went out to Camp Atterbury, and they talked the United States Army out of a 1943 Ford truck. It was a water truck. They brought the truck back to Lester's garage, and they converted it into the 1st Hartsville Fire Department. Dad went back over to the Atterbury, and I know this is history that I'm telling you now that a lot of people in Hartsville don't know. They went back over to Atterbury to buy a pumper to make the fire truck a pumper truck, and he talked the government out of a pumper. They came back and made the pumper truck, and that was the first Hartsville fire truck, and it was like I said, a 1943 Ford. They painted it red, and at that time, so that was in the 1940s, probably around 42 or 43. Then the women learned to be firefighters because the men went off to work, and if we had a fire during the day, there was nobody to fight the fire except the women. So my mother, Mary Biddle, Mary Beck, and a lot of the other women here in Hartsville that lived here at that time was the fire department during the daytime. They fought a lot of fires and saved a lot of homes. I just can't, and also after my dad started the Scouts at the Methodist Church in Hartsville, him and Skin Hedrick and Bigfoot Brown went down here, and my dad bought a plot of land down here just right before you go out of Hartsville, and they built a cement block building, which was the Scout House. They furnished it with all hickory furniture and everything, and that's where the Scouts met. In 1951, on January the 1st, we moved to Shelbyville, Indiana. And when we moved to Shelbyville, Indiana, then the town took over that building, and it has been a town center, and it's been used for different sorts of meetings. And my grandmother and grandfather had their 65th wedding anniversary in the basement of that building. And my mother passed away in 2010, and her and I was talking about 3 or 4 months before she died. She says, I don't know if your dad ever deeded that building over to the town of Hartsville where the Scout House was. My dad was a go-getter. He loved scouting, and he eventually went to Wisconsin to the Scoutmasters Association and became a scoutmaster. He taught men how to be scoutmasters. My mother was a den mother. It was Cub Scout troop. And when the church burnt, they came up to, we had moved the year before the church burnt, when they came up to Shelbyville, and they asked my dad for a $3,000 donation, and he said, well, there's 3 reasons why I won't donate $3,000. He said, the first place, if I told you I'd do it, I'd have to do it, and I don't have it to do. But he says, I'll tell you what I will do. He says, I'll bring my truck down here and load it with furniture, and I'll furnish the auctioneer, and we'll have an auction in the town square, and all the proceeds will go to the building fund of the United Methodist Church. So people in Hartsville bought items that they didn't want anymore, and we had a big auction here, and us kids put on a show on the bandstand, and we charged admission for it. And I mean, you could just stand here in the square and see it, but we still charged admission for the church, and that's one of the first fundraisers towards the building of the church that we now have. But we used to come over here in the square, and they had these gorgeous oak trees, and in the fall there would be oodles and gobs of trees, and we would make tree houses. Well, Mike and Carol made one like an igloo, and they got in there, and it was dark, so Mike goes home and gets a candle, and they light the candle, and they set the park on fire. But Carol says they didn't do it, but Mike still says they do. My brother Mike still says that he did it. Moat, which is Tagman now. I have a lot of memory stories. And then after I moved from Hartsville, I really didn't leave Hartsville. I would either be at Hartsville on the weekend, or my cousin Jeannie Birkenstock would be in Shelbyville with me. And we had a ritual that we would do on Saturday morning. We would get up and we would pop a dish pan full of popcorn and buy a 6-pack of Big Red. And we'd sit there and eat that popcorn and drink that Big Red until it was all gone, or until my mother come to get me. We knew everybody. We knew all the Hedricks, we knew the Becketts, we knew all the Moats. And when Carol Moat was born, I came home and told Mother, I said, oh, Mom, it's so great. Bessie's got a basketball team and now a cheerleader, because she had 4 or 5 boys before Carol was born, and Carol was her only daughter. Bessie was a big inspiration of me in the church. She was a wonderful Sunday school teacher, and then after I got older and came back to the church and opened a library in the church and had it open for the kids to come and study and for people to get books from, I'd be over here on Wednesday evening or Saturday evening, and nobody's showing up, and I heard the door open, there would come Bessie, and she'd come over and talk to me and keep me company. There's so many wonderful people that lived in this town that you just feel like they're all were your Bobs and Dads. And We used to, over in the side field between our house and Jesse Dillman's house, we used to play a game called Statue. And you'd be moving around and everything, and then somebody yelled statue, and then you froze in that position, whatever position you were in. And you couldn't move until they told you could. We played Red Rover in the park over here. We played Lemonade, and we played tag, and we would play until dark. And each one of our mothers would call us when it was time to come in, and we knew which mother was calling. All they'd have to do is say, time to come home, and you knew if that was your mom, or if that was Jeannie's mom, or Billy Dean's mom, or Don Dillman's mom, or who just brother called her. And the most important thing that I remember about Hartsville is each church had a bell. And on Sunday morning, each church rang their bell to call you to Sunday school and worship. And you knew what church bell it was by the tone of it. And that is a memory that really sticks into my head. Even though I moved away from Hartsville, I came back to Hartsville's church. I do live down in Columbus in Farrington Apartments, but Hartsville is still my home.
Horse Blair told us one time that rugby used to be called Hartsville Crossing. All the mail and freight and everything come in there. Well, I remember that there used to be corn cribs over there, and people hauled their corn stuff over there, and they put it on a train shipped it to Cincinnati, and hogs and cattle, they drove them over there and loaded them, sent them to Cincinnati. Just drove them, didn't haul them, drove them over. But then Arch drove the freight wagon to Rugby, to Hartsville Crossing, and Hartsville bought a jail. It's just a bunch of iron bars stuff, you know. And he said, "Well, there and get it," and said, "Come home," asked the guy riding with me. I wondered who'd be in it, be the first one in it. He said, "That night I found out." It was him. He got drunk and they put him in jail. Oh yeah, well, and I think it was 1944. We had a big ice storm, and there's ice to stick on the roads and stuff. That there's ice skating around the square, just like on the pond. And then the road was slick too, and Morrison's open on Saturday night, and me and Sonny Malby and Jack Sneed was up there, and some kid had a tricycle, and we had it out there. The road was kind of crowned, and we was trying to drive that tricycle up to the middle of the road, and it was a slick. I went to school up here.
And then where did you graduate from?
Well, I graduated from high school at Hope. I graduated from grade school in Clay, Kentucky. My dad worked on construction. We traveled and gone quite a bit. And I passed from 7th to 8th grade twice. I passed from 7th to 8th grade in Tennessee, and then school went out when we got to Kentucky, and I passed 7th and 8th grade again there. And then started high school in Kentucky, and then come up here and started to Hope. But I went to school up here a lot when we was home during the winter, you know. And got the McQueen boys and the Beck boys, and the bus. And then, well, Fred Burrell had a garage back of his house down there, and us boys found a buggy on Halloween. And we tore it down, we put it up on top of his garage and set it up on the top of the garage. He went next morning, his buggy said, no, nobody catches that not doing it, then nobody know it's done next morning. Of course, we did that, so everybody went to bed.
I bet you guys were a handful.
Yeah, well, that's what the teacher said. used to play what they called blackmat and had the Chambers boys. Dick and Harold, and Dick was the younger one, and we like to get him. You'd run from one line to the other, and you have to get him down, you know, and pat him 3 times on the back to make him out. And we'd get him down when it's muddy and drag him around through the mud. And then he was one, Emma Lou Cooper was a teacher, and she'd do something, she'd say, "You want a shaking up or a whipping?" And she'd, shaking up, she'd just grab you and shake you till your book fell out of your desk.
This was your teacher?
Teacher, yeah. And most people take the shaking up, but Dick, he didn't like that. You ask him what he wanted, he'd say whipping, so he'd get up and bend over the desk and she'd whip him.
That's hilarious.
How many times did they shake you?
I didn't keep count.
My name is Bill Riley. I grew up here in Hartsville, was born in Bartholomew County Hospital in 1944. We moved to Hartsville in 1950. And Dad built a house over here on Northeast Street, right behind the post office, and that's where I grew up. I remember the Methodist Church burning to the ground over here on the corner, which has subsequently been rebuilt. It was great growing up here in Hartsville. I was a newspaper carrier for a while, and I carried the Indianapolis Times. They don't make it anymore. That was the Scripps Howard paper that came out in the afternoon. My major competitor for newspaper sales was the Evening Republican. The Moat boys carried the Evening Republican, and I carried the Times all around Hartsville. And the only saving grace I had in terms of competition was that I had the pleasure of carrying a Sunday paper. The Evening Republican didn't publish on Sundays back then, as no evening newspaper would publish on Sundays, but I carried the Morning Times, Indianapolis Times. And it was great because we even had a colored comic section. It was great. But that gave me a chance, other than mowing grass and helping people bale hay, that gave me a chance to do some things here in the community and, keep up with people and meet people. But I grew up here in Hartsville, and at that time, Ernie Gilliland had a big general merchandise store right here on the corner. His son, Bob Gilliland, came back from Korea, worked at the store a while, and bought a Sinclair station down at 9 and 46. And I was lucky enough that Bob asked me to come and work for him. He or Sandra, his wife, would pick me up at the house on Friday nights, take me down to the station. I would work there on Friday nights. They'd bring me back home. They'd pick me up Saturday morning, take me down, bring me back home, and Sunday afternoons do that. And I learned a lot from Bob about working with people, about dealing with people. I'll never forget, and I use this illustration every chance I get. I never forget the fact that Bob said, "Billy," that's what I was called back then, wasn't it, Jimmy?
Yes, Billy.
He said, "Billy, when a car pulls on the drive, before the driver shuts the engine off, we need to be out next to the driver's window. So when they roll it down, we ask them if they want regular or ethyl, how much, if we can check the air in their tires, check their oil, and we always clean their windshield. Because when that driver pulls off, I want to make sure that they feel like they're more than welcome to come back." Now that was back at a time when regular gasoline was 25 cents a gallon. And ethyl, quote, ethyl gasoline was like 28 cents a gallon. So gasoline was markedly cheaper than today. Plus, the driver didn't have to pump their own, unlike today. So I learned a lot from Bob. I give Bob a lot of credit because I learned a lot from him.
Good day. My name's George Parks. My nickname was Bud. I lived in Hartsville from about 1963 until 1967 when I was kicked out of high school and joined the Air Force, stayed there for 20 years, worked for Honeywell Corporation, traveled all over the world, and come back to about 10 miles from here because there's no place better than Hartsville, Indiana. My story is about when I was about 15 years old. I had never drank any kind of liquor yet, and the people I lived with went away for the weekend, and a bunch of us young boys decided that we'd try drinking some. Well, some of them had already drank before, but among the people that I recall that was there was, of course, myself, George Kloss, who's deceased, Steve Gabbard, who is also deceased, Marvin Hedrick, who is also deceased, Bob Hamner, also deceased, and I believe Donnie McQueen, and I think Donnie's still around. I think he lives up in Edinburgh. But on this particular night, us young boys got a hold of some liquor and got drunk and kind of got bored and didn't have anything else to do, so we come over here to the park. And at the time, one of our favorite things to do was aggravate the town marshal and the deputies. You know, we would just, you know, do anything to annoy them. And of course, I think they kind of enjoyed chasing us and that kind of thing. But on that particular night, it's probably 11 o'clock. All us boys came over here to the park. We was just climbing the trees and hooting and hollering. And of course, pretty soon the town marshal came over to see what was going on, and we all took off. They caught some of us. I wasn't one of them that was caught. Marvin Hedrick tells me, or Moog as we called him then, he said that the deputy town marshal chased him around a good bit and found him in some bushes, or thought he was in some bushes, but Marvin wouldn't come out, so he got away too. But eventually, some of the boys were arrested. I believe Steve Gabbard was arrested, Bob Hamner, and was taken off by the town marshal to town and was thrown in jail. Of course, they appeared at that time, I think it was before Judge Pusher, and the judge asked him, well, what's the charges? And the boys claimed that they were coon hunting in the park here, that they were up shaking the trees, trying to shake the coons out of the trees. And the judge asked him, he said, well, did anybody have guns? And no, they didn't. Nobody had guns or anything. Well, anyway, the judge let them loose. And I guess what happened a few days later was the town marshal went and complained about it. So they brought the boys back and made them do public service around the town here. And as I recall, at that time there was a rail all the way around the square. And the boys had to paint the rail. And of course, the rest of us who did not get caught, we were there, you know, annoying them all day long. But anyway, that's just, you know, one kind of things that boredom and being a teenager will get you at that time in the mid 60s. But we did have a great time growing up in this little town. I've always felt like the kids that I grew up with were more like relatives than friends. And it was just a great place to be. I've spent many hours on the square here drinking beer, underage. And I've requested that when I die, that somebody put a little bit of my ashes here somewhere, you know. I feel like that this is part of the place that eventually some part of me needs to remain here. But I appreciate you listening to my story. It's one of my fond memories of childhood with some great people that I dearly, dearly miss. Thanks.
Well, I came here from Cleveland, Ohio, where my parents lived. And I was amazed at how, when I walked down the street, that everyone spoke to me, because in Cleveland, that didn't happen. And I always thought, well, you know, they didn't know me. And why were they speaking to me? But I soon found out it was just a very friendly town. Ada Graham was my Sunday school teacher. She was a girls' Sunday school teacher. And I can remember the room was right here in front on the south end. And I remember some of the things the church used to do was to serve lunch for the college alumni when they still had their meetings, and the young girls of the church got to help serve the meals. A lot of the people, I can still remember some of their names. I can't remember people's names nowadays, but I can remember some of the names of people that was here. Mrs. Jessie Boyle, Ralph Williams. Of course, Dorothy Titus was with us for a long time. The church used to have a fall festival. Mary Ellen DeBusk used to chair the festivals, and it was always real nice, well attended. Yeah, they were free movies, always Laurel and Hardy or the Three Stooges, but it was a time when the town congregated and everybody came out. I met my husband through his aunt. I had been in the hospital, and she was a candy striper, nurse's aide or something. And we kind of struck up a friendship, and of course we didn't have telephone service out here then. So if we communicated, it had to be by letter. And she had a nephew that she wanted me to meet. They went to the Petersville United Methodist Church, and I went to the Hartsville Methodist Church, so we kind of had something in common. And so between his family that brought him out here and my family that took me down there to visit, I was 14 years old when I met him. And no, his parents lived outside of Petersville, and I met him when I was 14. I graduated when I was 18. The same month I was 19, and 2 months later we got married. He was in the Navy, and he was home on leave, and we were married on the 4th of July. So we were married 54 and a half years when he passed away.
Janet, who was the best looking fella in town when you were a young girl?
When I was young.
Was there a kind of a handsome boy that
Oh, they was all handsome when I was young. Oh gosh, the Beck boys and Don DeBusk and Arnold Beckett, and but I was young. I was 12.
We're Tom and Carol Moat. We were the youngest of 6 children born to Ike and Bessie Moat. He's older than I am, though. I'm the youngest. He's 15 months older than I, but we had a lot of fun growing up in this town. We have a lot of memories. Lots of fun. Well, remember we used to come up here to watch movies?
Friday night movies.
Yeah, the free movies. You've probably heard a lot about that, but there was free movies, and a lot of our other brothers would come with us and stuff. But this whole little town square over there, that part of it, just be full, and you could ride up and down the street on your bicycles or roller skates or whatever, and not worry about getting run over. And we grew up hunting. Our dad always. My brothers let me tag along. So you notice I'm the talker. He's the agreeer.
Yeah, I'm just here. Yeah.
We did that a lot though when we were growing up. We had a good childhood. We were blessed with good parents and siblings and friends. I think we were just always together with a lot of stuff within school, because even in the summertime we played ball up there. We actually had backstop, and so we played ball in the summer. It wasn't on the league, it was just we played scrap, and we did have a lot of fun. We did. It was Hartsville was a great town to grow up in. I mean, it's still a great town because it's not nearly what a lot of the other places are around, and it was just fun. It was just fun. We used to ride horses. Of course, you guys have your mom. You have the pictures of Mr. Wilson's ponies that we used to get to ride on and all that good stuff. So, how many ponies did Mr. Wilson have?
8 or 10.
Probably 8 or 10. And then in the spring, when the mares had their colts, whichever pony was the one that you were assigned to, you helped break their colts and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and that doesn't happen anymore. You know, you got your chores done, and then you got to go do that. So, but Tom was Mr. Wilson's favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, really was. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, he gave me a pony to help him over there. I wasn't doing anything, but they gave me a pony. Well, I was over there most of the time anyhow, so that worked out good for me. I was one of the few kids in town that had their own pony.
That's for certain. That's for certain.
I run with Dave and Marvin a lot.
Charlie.
Charlie Imel. They were my best buddies like that. We go out to Robert's farm out there and play a lot out there in the woods, and in the barns, things like that.
I bet you never got any trouble.
We never got caught. Yeah, we was lucky there.
It was just fun. Said, you know, it was like I said, you know, Hartsville was a good place. We could be out at dark, and I don't think Mother ever really worried about us. I mean, we knew we had to get home before it got dark, but she knew pretty well where everybody was, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, your Grandma Hedrick and Mother were really good friends, and so I'm sure, you know, and it's the same way with the other moms around. If somebody did something they probably weren't supposed to, it definitely was going to be, not necessarily telephone, but it was going to be known, probably at church. Did you know? And it was like, no. So, but like I said, we did, you know, it's a lot of good memories here. A lot of good memories here. I'm glad I still live here. So
So when you hit Hartsville, what happened? What year did you hit Hartsville?
What year did I hit Hartsville? About 41.
41.
1941, lived in the same house. They always said, like I always quote that story there of Fred Simmons. He said they always told Fred he never would get very far, and he said, I didn't. I lived 5 miles from Hope. Well, I got less than what Fred did. I live in the same house I was born in, so I didn't get no place.
Well, I'm about the same way.
But really, I can't imagine anybody wanting to live anyplace else. I mean, I just think it's when you get, it's like what Dick Teskey said one time when he lived up there in Michigan. Said, you don't see anybody in Michigan sit on the front porch. Well, see, down here you can sit on the front porch, you know, and not worry about somebody shooting you.
Not yet.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate. There's a lot of kids here in town to play with. And when my granddaughter come along, they just wasn't no kids here. But man, I bet they was, golly, what, you think, 20? You got the Smith kids, and you had the Beckett's, and you had you and Denny, and you had the Moat kids. And
it wasn't too hard to whip up a softball game.
No, it wasn't too hard to get up in the morning and find somebody to play with. Somebody's going to be at home. And then back in the days you traded comic books. Remember that everybody had comic books that cost, what, a nickel or a dime?
Yeah.
You bought something, you go, I remember trading comic books with Ernie Moat. And, yeah, it was a different time. A lot of fun. And then with Birkenstock, did you ever go with Birkenstock when we used to go picnic?
Yeah.
Take a can of Campbell's soup and a Coke.
I was telling Petey that earlier.
It's crazy. Birkenstock's the only guy I ever knew that seasoned his soup. He'd always bring a little packet of pepper along, a little packet of salt. I mean, he'd season it. Man, I just opened the can and heated it.
Did you have to heat it over a campfire? Is that what?
Yeah, he'd build a little fire and heat it up. Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot. I always remember that story. These are things that still strikes a memory to me. Remember the time that me and the Beckett's and somebody else, there's about 6 of us, went out there to Wascom's Lake to swim. We got through swimming, and Ben Wascom said, boys, don't climb that fence over there. Come back through the gate. I don't want you to tear my fence down. I don't want you to smash it down. Come back. We thought, you're crazy. I ain't walking back over there to go through that gate. We're only about 4 steps from the fence, and we said, we can beat him. So we climbed that fence, run down that gravel road over, you know, till we get to Prosser's place. You know where I'm talking about over there? And they had barbed wire on the top rung. I think I was the second guy to the fence and the last guy over. I couldn't get loose from that barbed wire. Boy, was he hot.
Did he catch it?
He sure. Yeah, me and Roger, poor old Roger, tried to help me. Yeah, it was funny.
Tried to help you.
Yeah. Wasn't it over there where Jack Franklin, them, you guys, was that you and that bunch when they were sledding over there one time, and as the day went along, that snow become ice?
Yeah.
And didn't he get
knocked?
And didn't he get knocked out one time over? And you're gonna, I've always heard this, that you're gonna carry him back up the hill. A bunch of guys was, and they kept getting halfway up the hill and slipping and dropping him, and having to pick him. He's probably in worse shape then than he ever was.
I don't remember that.
Let me see that pie.
Well, I went to school in Indianapolis at that time, but I just remember them guys telling about it.
But we'd start off coming down that hill, and as you first built your run, you would stop.
Yeah.
Because the piece of tin or sled or whatever we was on would kind of dig down in the snow. Well, you drag that tin up the top of the hill again, and away you'd go. Next time you'd go 10 or 15 foot further. Well, that whole area where you was ending up stopping was the swamp. And, you know, it's cold, we was little, but we got going so good, we went all the way across that swamp into where the fence was at. And then we started stepping in water as we went back. So our feet would get frozen.
Yeah, I'd heard you guys, you come down that hill and you didn't run into a bank. You kind of, where you're talking about that little water run through there, you ran to the opposite bank. But as the day went on, when Jack finally got hit, you guys jumped that bank. The school was out. Oh, that's funny.
I bet they didn't call off school too much when you could all walk to school.
Well, it didn't seem like they called it off.
I went to school in Indianapolis. Then it's kind of hard for me not to go to school. I lived in a Garden City trailer park. Right across the street was the school. But they called it off up there more than what I think they did down here. You guys got out of school, what, in April?
Well, it was early.
And either that or early May at that time, because I know I couldn't believe when I went to Indianapolis to school, we had to go to like May the 30th, even up to June.
But all the kids that lived in Hartsville and went through grades 1 through 8 went right up here at the school. And, snow wasn't a big issue because we'd walk right down the sidewalk. Sometimes the sidewalk would be scooped and sometimes it wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think, you guys here in Hartsville, I don't think you ever run into not going to school until you had to start riding the school bus to Hope.
Yeah.
Because everybody just lived here in town. I think Linda Roberts would have been the only one that didn't live right in town, and she may have at that time, because they used to live, I think, in that house right there where Jim Oldham lives.
Is that right? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. There used to be a barn behind that house.
There used to be a barn behind a lot of houses.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Left over from the horse and buggy.
So everybody had a barn?
Yeah, I had a barn, and maybe had some chickens. Could have had a hog.
Right in your backyard?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I fenced them off from the garden. And, I'm not saying every house had one, but any house of any size pretty well had a little barn.
You know, it's still amazing to me. Well, you've been over talking to Gene Sneed. It's hard for me to believe that Hartsville had 1,000 people in it at one time. That's incredible. I've heard stories that it was a growing metropolis at one time, but I never knew there's 1,000 people lived here.
Well, it kind of built up in population, and then the college burnt.
Yeah.
And I think it's, according to what Gene's telling me, it kind of dwindled after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But that's just, you know, I had heard that one time, and it was, could have been a pretty good sized town.
Yeah, but we couldn't wait to get our driver's license so we could get out of town. Our big entertainment on a Sunday afternoon was we'd get in the car and go to a place that had an outside basketball court. Every court we had, basketball court we had, was all gravel. Wasn't a basketball court.
She may want to cut this part out, but do you remember that time we come down 3? We had just bought ice cream over there at Westport. And Birkenstock felt like it'd be funny to throw an ice cream cone at that oncoming car.
He had bought a sundae and he had bought a large ice cream cone.
Oh, jeez.
So he ate that sundae and he wasn't hungry anymore. So it's kind of like, what am I going to do with this? Oh, I'll throw it at that car. He just kind of eased it out the window. Boom.
Boy, it just exploded all over that whole windshield. It's all white. Then they turned around and chased you. When we went up here to Joe Dance's, which was right there at 3 and 46, drove around, went inside and come back out and took off. And that guy, West Sachs Moat Talk that time, that guy come into, the sheriff's department out of Decatur County come in here and drove all over Hartsville looking for you. Oh, I remember that. Gee whiz.
He said, you boys better go somewhere. They're coming after you.
I couldn't believe Birkenstock did that.
But you didn't get caught.
No.
No, I bet if they knew what it was, I bet we'd have been on every post office wall in this area trying to get us.
I bet the statute of limitations has run out.
Yeah, it's run out now.
But it's funny, I was working at the Cummins cafeteria at that time, and I went in on the afternoon shift, and actually we cooked meals for the second shift workers. And during break time, my boss asked me if I'd been throwing any ice cream cones.
Is that right?
I was just like a true blue guy. No, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't me. It was Berkey in the back seat.
Oh, I never will forget that. I mean, if anybody could ever seen that ice cream cone go across that windshield, I mean, it's really dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Because that guy couldn't see a thing. It was just all white. And I think he had his kids in there with him and his wife.
I don't know who all was there.
Oh, that's one of them kind of things when somebody falls down, you wait until they get back up before you laugh. I mean, that's one of the kind of things when you see he didn't swerve off the road and wreck. Oh.
Somebody could come into town and look for some farm help, some bale hay, pick tomatoes, and there's always some boys around Hartsville that would do that. Well, it didn't take too long till all them boys disappeared.
Do you
climate here in Hartsville changed?
Did you ever pick tomatoes for Sonny?
Nobody to help the farmers.
Did you ever pick tomatoes for Sonny Massey?
Yeah.
Sonny Massey was a young guy at the time we were just kids. He may have been 5 or 6 years older. And he had this plot of ground out there right across from the falls. And us kids had picked tomatoes for him. Money wasn't a problem because nobody picked tomatoes for the money. They picked tomatoes because your mom and dad wasn't going to let you sit around the house. And so you went and picked tomatoes. So we go out there, you go down a row, and then you quit picking and come back and pick a tomato out of the hamper. I can remember that, and sit underneath that shade tree and drink water. Then make one more pass down through there and go home. You could work all week and maybe make $10 or $12.
That's right.
I never will forget that. He always had people wanting to pick for him. And do you remember when we picked tomatoes? Well, you never had time, but we picked tomatoes for Hadley. And Birkenstock over there blasted his kid with a tomato.
No, can't remember that.
Oh, that kid got to crying. His dad got upset with him. That's funny.
We used to decastle corn on stilts down in Texas. And that was always fun. Of course, springtime it always, early summer, get a lot of rain here. And then stilts would be awful hard to walk on, stepping in mud. You'd stick down in the mud, kind of lose your balance, and crawl over, and next thing you knew, you were totally
I'm
mud.
going to borrow your armrest here.
Okay. I'll tell you the thing about that detasseling was getting up after you got down.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to spread your legs as far as you could, do the semi push-up, stick your rear end up real high, and then have somebody to grab your belt and put, remember that? But now McClure and Olis Beckett could get up by themselves. I never did accomplish that. I could get down by myself.
You just said here, I'm William Birkenstock, and I grew up in Hartsville. And when my friend and I, Butch Brown, were walking from the north side of town to the south side of town, we went by a house on a corner about a block prior to where he lived. And I asked him if he wanted to play a trick, and he said he did. And this was one of the only houses that had running water and a faucet with a hose out of it. So I told him to go up and knock on the door. I told him to turn the water on, and he turned the water on and had it ready. And I told him I'd go up and knock on the door, and whenever they come to the door, drown the person that was answering the door. And I went up and hit the door 3 times. Nobody come. I hit the door 3 times again, and here come the owner around the corner, and I told him, here he comes. And he opened the door, and Butch Brown completely drowned him. And I went off the steps and run to my house, and Butch run to his house about a block away. That was it.
Oh, Walter was upset, wasn't he? Wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
I'll kill you kids if I catch you.
He said, if I find you, I'll throw the hooks to you.
Yeah. You remember that time you threw that water balloon and hit Bill Oliver?
Oh, yeah. Do I have to tell all the things I've done wrong? Went right in that little side glass.
That little wing.
Yeah.
Just drowned it. That's funny. And you hit Everett Bunny and he chased you. He was going to kill you.
I hit Everett Bunny. He was going from north to south in a 55 hardtop Buick, killing time till he got to see his girlfriend. And I unloaded a water balloon on his car, and he jumped out and told me if he got a hold of me, he'd throw the hooks to me. I remember going in Doc and Ruby's store in wintertime when the kids would go sled riding, and after they went sled riding, they'd stop in there and buy pop and potato chips and talk. The one thing I remember is when he had cotton gloves, and they were real cheap, but when we got a big hard snow on the ground and everybody was going sled riding, he marked them up a couple dollars.
You mentioned that. Doc one time, he had a sale, and they sold one of them kerosene lamps out there. He had them inside brand new. He told me this story. He had them inside brand new, and he took that one, he had a little bit of rust on it, and they just said, put this for sale. And it went for a couple dollars higher than what he was selling for in the store. So he just started taking them out of the store out there and stuff. They just had, anybody wanted to buy one, had to buy it for about $2 more, and they could went inside and bought it for a lot less. Now he was telling me about that. He was talking about the time, and he went up in Franklin at the Masonic Old People's Home, where they had these bed chambers. You know what that is? That's that pot, you know, when you don't want to walk outside. And bought all of them and come back through Hope. Sold them to Harvey Cook. Remember, Harvey Cook had that antique store? That was a different time, ain't it?
Yeah. Alice Bear, he was older than Darrell and I, and and they were used to be a barn down the south end of town, and he climbed up in the top. He climbed up in the top of it and put a big hay rope, and kids would swing on it. And Maxine Shepherd was swinging on it, and he goes inside and gets a butcher knife and climbs up in the top and cuts the rope while she's swinging, and she always did blame me for doing it.
My name is William Oliver. My grandma and grandpa lived a quarter to a half a mile east of Anderson Falls in a log cabin. And they raised all their kids in that log cabin. They had 17. Part of them died, and part of them are buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and part of them in Pisgah Cemetery. Okay, now when Grandma, they were farmers. So Grandma stayed at home while they was in the field, and she kept a .50 caliber rifle by her chair, smoked corncob pipe. And one day somebody pounded on the door after dinner, told them to go away. They didn't do it. They pounded again, she told them to go away. The third time they tried to stick a knife in and raise the latch up, she shot through the door and killed a man. And he lay there until they come in out of the field at dark. And then the next day they called the sheriff. They laid him out in the yard. The next day they called the sheriff. And they only had one sheriff, that was in Columbus. And he asked them who the guy was. They said they didn't know, and they told him, they said, well, just go ahead and bury him. So he was buried there in the woods in the no-head. That's it. Nobody ever knew who he was. There's a lot of old tramps back in them days that went around from house to house begging clothes and food. So I never knew. That was Grandma. In the wintertime, Punk had a '49 Ford, and we was out riding around, and we come out by my house, and there was about a foot of snow on it. And Punk had false teeth when he was like this, not very old, probably 20. Well, anyway, we'd been drinking beer, and he had to chuck up, so he got out in the side ditch, and I waited in the car. He come back, and he said he lost his teeth. So we went back, and we started digging all through the side ditch to find his false teeth. It was funny as hell. But we finally did find them, but it took us about an hour because we were sifting snow out of a side ditch. I was born in Possum Glory. I was born up in Possum Glory. I had an older brother, Alan. We had an old buggy, and he guided this buggy from the back. And when I was about 3 years old, he would push me down the hill, and it got away from him, and he ran off into the mill race. And he promised me ice cream, candy, and all this if I wouldn't tell nobody. Of course, I did. But that was something we lived up there. Everybody had a sled. In front of the house, went down the hill to the road. We all had sleds, and they all throwed water on there in the wintertime. Winters back then started in November, and they lasted till April. But anyway, we lived up there.
Did you have a car?
Huh?
Did you have a car?
Oh yeah, Dad worked at Cummins.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Where up in Boston?
Well, Dad worked at the foundry until 1939. He went to work at Cummins. I was born in '37, so.
So you live way up in Possum Glory somewhere? Or?
No, you're familiar?
Kind of, yeah. I've been back there.
When you went in from where the bridge is at there, you were down, you make a bend to the left, you make a bend to the right, and then there's a house up on the hill. And that's where we lived.
Okay.
The neighbors lived across the creek. Their name was Pruitt. And there was a swinging bridge across Clifty. And when I was 2 and 3 years old, we'd go across that bridge. And when the river was up, I was scared to death. In later years, when I got older, the old railroad bridge up by Bernie, I'd walk across that one log at a time. I was scared to death. And it was from back then.
Yeah.
That does sound scary.
It was scary. It was to me. When I was 2 or 3 years old, and of course, I couldn't keep from looking down and watching this water. And sometimes it was pretty deep and pretty rough.
By yourself?
Oh no, Mom and Dad, and all of us kids. Mom and Dad, me and Juanita, and Alan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, Uncle Bill lived up on the hill there. When you went through the bridge up the hill, the house on the left, Uncle Bill lived there. And they used to have that old buggy up there, and they'd ride it down that road through the bridge. Didn't have no brakes, but they could steer it from the front. And a whole bunch of them would get on that, and when they'd ride it down that gravel road through the bridge. When I was in the Army, I was in the medics. And whenever I had time, I'd go to USO. Myself and another guy, we stood up there and tell jokes for an hour at a time. Just.
Oh, really? So you were a professional comedian then?
We did that. No, I wasn't no professional comedian. I just got up and done it just for everybody to laugh. I thought it was funny with everybody laughing, you know. And,
well, he thought you had the best jokes.
oh, yeah.
And they made him popular at school because he had the best jokes.
When I was a little kid, I was like 12 years old, Dad bought me a .22 rifle, single shot, and way up at the top of the tree there was a squirrel. I shot it, and then you had to pull the bolt back and take your knife, scrape a cartridge out, and I shot it again. And I had to pull the old bolt back, take my knife, scrape the cartridge, empty out, looked up, and it was still there, and I shot again. I went through 50, 22 bullets shooting that squirrel. And I said, I was done squirrel hunting. I didn't want to do it no more, so I just laid the rifle down, started to go home. When I walked by that tree, there's a pile of squirrels that high. That's funny.
Hey, my name is Wilma Hedrick, and I was born here in Hartsville in 1939. That's a long, long time ago. And of course, our family was big in just about anything that happened around Hartsville. If a Hedrick didn't do it, they got blamed for it. That's just about the way it was. But anyway, Buck, Emily, and I were kids growing up too, and Buck was my basketball player. We'd go down to Buck's house and play basketball out in his driveway. But what the story he wanted me to tell you is about Vernon karate. Because when I was probably a freshman in high school, and Vernon was a couple of years older, or at least a year older, but I had this awfulest crush on him, well, it was. He was the baseball pitcher for the baseball team at school. And I mean, he had one fast pitch. None of the boys here in town would catch for him because, I mean, it would burn the daylights out of your hands. So I thought, okay, I'll catch for him. I know I can catch for him. So he come down to the house, had fenced-in yard there at Mother and Daddy's, and he was a-pitching to me. Well, the glove slipped off just enough. Of course, I'm right-handed, so it was on this hand. So I have two broken fingers, so basketball, Vernon karate. But anyway, he threw it, and it hit, and when it did, the glove slipped just enough that it just pulled this finger back away. I wouldn't have told him I was hurt for anything in this world. I shoved that glove back on, and I caught a few more, and finally I said, I think we need to quit now. And he didn't know it for a few days after that, what had happened, and he was just really, really sorry about it. But another little story I want to tell was about Butch Brown and Jimmy Meyer. You probably don't know this one. Butch had this old horse, big old horse named Nellie. I think Nellie was the name, big old white horse. And we were going to go out to his cousin's, Larry Brown's, out in the country. So Butch decided the three of us could ride on old Nellie. Well, we get started out the county line road, and we get out not quite to the gun club, and there's another little entrance there. But there just also happens to be this big mud puddle. He didn't bother to tell us that Nellie did not like water. So he's going to bring this horse into this water. Well, as he did, the horse decides, I ain't going through that water, and she starts backing up like this. And there goes Wilma into the fence, and Jimmy into the fence, and Butch into the fence. So here's the horse all the way back in town, and everybody's wondering where we are, and here's the three of us all limping in back into town because we're really hurt from slamming into the fence post. But I can't think of too awful many that might not incriminate me, so I better just quit at that one. Barbara was just a baby. I was working over here at Ernie's, and it was a family from Ohio. It was a mom and dad and a grandma. I think the grandma was the woman's mother, and about three or four kids, little bitty things. And they got into town, and it was super bad snow anyway, but they had car trouble. And they didn't know where to go or what to do or anything, so they just happened to stop at the house. Well, anybody knew Mother. So anyway, they all ended up spending the night. I took Barbara back across the street because we had our room over there, but Mom just did what she always did, put blankets on the floor, and one slept on the floor. If they'd double up in beds. But the next day then, Daddy worked on the car and got the car running, whatever the problem was. But the man didn't have any money, but they did have some government commodities in the car. They had some cheese and powdered milk and I don't know what else, but anyway, so they had brought that in, so Mother had used that as part of the supper meal to feed all of them. But the next day then, after Dad got the car running for him, and they were going on back to Ohio, and so Daddy gave him $50. Now back those days, $50 was a lot of money, and especially from a family as big as we was and everything, you know. Of course, there wasn't that many kids at home back then, but Daddy gave him $50, and the guy promised him, he said, "No, I'll send it back to you." So he took their address and everything, you know. By golly, wasn't but about 2 or 3 weeks, that $50 came back in the mail. That's right. He just figured it was one of them things that's gone, you know. It's your good deed for the day, but that was my dad. And I can remember even after Daddy died, there was several people that came to Mother and gave her money. They said that Daddy had loaned it to them at work. They were guys that he worked with, and he had loaned them money, but they hadn't paid him back. So there was several that didn't pay him back, but there was several that did give Mother money that said, "We owe this to John."
Kathy DeSpain. Oh, there were so many kids around my age when I was growing up here that we never waited for somebody to play with. There was somebody everywhere to play with. We all get together and play together, and we had to watch crossing the road when we were real little. Had to have a parent to help us cross the highway, but we still made it to the other side of the highway with our friends. So there was a lot of people my age around. Seemed like a big group. Oh, Shelley Banks and Amy Smith, and next door was Gary Pittman, and he was always a troublemaker and or instigator. And yeah, Tony Sullivan was here, and the Myers, Tim and Tom. Kim was a little bit older, and Carrie and Kelly Emily, and kind of trying to think about the whole town. Mitzi Howard was here, and Angie Keller, Sherry Myers. It's about all I can think of as I pass through town. Trying to remember everybody going from one area to the other around. There was stuff we'd play and ride bikes, and when we were little we'd get together and play with our dolls, and there was a lot to do. Anything you wanted. I had to be around my house when I was young, yeah. But Grandma gave me pretty much leeway. I could be next door, across the street in the field, or you know, wherever around the house that she could come out and see me or yell for me, and I'd hear her. Yeah, we got to go trick-or-treating to everybody's house. And everybody knew everybody in Hartsville. And always has, and still that way a lot. I mean, there's a lot of new people in town, but there's still so many people that you know, you could drive by and they knew the car. They knew who it was. And if they heard a different car out the window, they had to look. But there was Halloweens, we went every home. There was never a home we didn't stop at. And Holman's always had apples. Lots of kids didn't like to stop, but Holman's apples were really good. So I remember your mom giving popcorn sometime, but they always had candy bars too. So yeah, it was a good time at Halloween because everybody was out. You know, even as we got a little older, we still trick-or-treated. We still had fun with it. We all rode bikes so much, and we played cat and mouse with each other in town. And you know, one had to chase the other, and then when they got caught, they had to go back and chase the other. We played cat and mouse all day long, bikes. And then we got a little older, we did it in cars. But we still always had a good time in town. You know, when we walk each other home, where we could walk halfway and meet, and then separate and go home. You know. I remember Carrie and I doing that for years when we were young. She was like 3 blocks away. So we'd walk halfway in between and then go home our separate ways.
Fire ain't fake.
The fire is real. Yay, Mary! I'm June Despain McKay.
And how old are you?
I'm 88 years old.
88 years young.
Yeah, right.
Tell me what you remember about being young in Hartsville.
Well, I wasn't too old when we had the Hartsville Cafe.
Yeah.
All these kids are adults and got kids and grandkids around here now. They used to come in the restaurant after school.
What'd you do there?
I owned the restaurant. Oh, kids come in there after school, and what was them kids' names? I can't remember their last name, but they had a big black dog. And when it got time for them to get off of the bus, he'd always be there. I don't know how he could tell time, but he could tell time. What was them people's names? I need somebody older than you are.
Probably a lot older than me.
Yeah, right.
So what was your specialty at the cafe?
Well, next door to us is where Bud and Jessie Dillman lived. And Jessie baked all my pies for me. And everybody come in to get a piece of Jessie Dillman's homemade pie. I really liked Jessie. She was a good lady. She raised the iris, her and Bud. In fact, they spaded up all their front yard and filled them full of iris and then sold the bulbs. I just think country living, perfect place to raise your kids. We always had dogs and cats for them to play with. It's a good place to be. First time I've been here for a while too, since I broke my hip.
Okay, of course.
And everybody's out for the occasion, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
The fire ain't fake.
The fire is real. Yay, Mary!